Pray for me. Most of you have seen this clip by now. Seeing an opportunity to rescue my squad leader, I darted into the open under the cover of smoke, grabbed him by the strap on his plate carrier, and I drug him to safety. It was a cinematic moment that couldn't have possibly been scripted any better, and yet it was an authentic multiplayer game on Squad's new map, Fallujah. And yet, after that incredible moment in a video game, I found myself reflecting on the second Battle of Fallujah, the real one that happened in 2004. A specific moment captured in a famous photograph shows Gunnery Sergeant Ryan Shane attempting to rescue Sergeant Lonnie Wells. It was the 9th of November in 2004. Operation Phantom Fury was underway. Sergeant Wells, moving through the street, was struck by a sniper bullet and lied face down in the open street, bleeding from his pelvis. Gunnery Sergeant Shane saw him laying there and exposed himself to enemy fire, running into the open to rescue his friend. He arrived to Sergeant Lonnie Wells and grabbed him by the strap on the back of his armored vest and began to pull him to safety. As he did so, another Marine also arrived and attempted to aid in getting Sergeant Lonnie Wells to safety. And yet as they moved him, they began to take fire once again. A sniper's bullet found Gunnery Sergeant Ryan Shane in the stomach. And the fourth, and what would be a series of 4 pictures, shows Gunnery Sergeant Shane lying on the ground with his friend. Sergeant Shane would live. Sergeant Lonnie Wells would not. Gunny Shane would later be awarded the Bronze Star Medal with Valor for his actions in Fallujah on that day. He was quoted later in life saying, "I'm finding it really hard to accept that my greatest achievement as a Marine, this medal, also comes from my greatest failure. I didn't save Lonnie on that day." And yet, Gunnery Sergeant Shane and Sergeant Wells would not have found themselves on the streets of Fallujah on the 9th of November 2004, if not for the events of the 31st of March. On that day, 4 American private military contractors from the Blackwater paramilitary organization named Wesley Badalona, Scott Helvenston, Jerry Savko, and Michael Teague were ambushed and killed in the city of Fallujah. After they were killed, their bodies were mutilated and burned, and then strung from the bridge leading into Fallujah city over the Euphrates River. The military, security, and political situation became more tenuous following the murders of the contractors, and the pressure to clear the city of Fallujah from insurgents continued to rise, ultimately leading to the initiation of Operation Phantom Fury. Military operations in and around the city of Fallujah in November of 2004 would ultimately lead to the deaths of 95 soldiers and Marines from the United States, with 560 wounded. The Iraqi military, those allied with the United States, would suffer 10 killed and 43 wounded, while the British would suffer 4 killed and 10 wounded. It's estimated that the insurgents in the city would suffer casualties ranging from 1,200 to 1,500 killed, while civilian casualties hovered between 580 and 800 civilians killed as a result of the fighting. What does this all have to do with Squad? Well, as I reflected on the Battle of Fallujah, it also had me asking some questions of myself about the efficacy of making a map detailing such a chaotic and horrific historical event and putting it in a game. I think these are fair questions to ask, and I think that they're the same ones that are asked time and again as we evolve through these generations of digital media. Back when Squad was just a Kickstarter campaign, they allowed the community to vote on what map they wanted included from Project Reality in Squad once it goes live. The community overwhelmingly voted for the Fallujah map, and rightfully so. The Project Reality version of the map was dynamic and enormous and immersive, and they wanted to see that same experience repeated in Squad. But as the years went on, OWI had not yet delivered on that promise. Finally, in 2017, the developers published a Road to Fallujah update, Part 1. In it, they described their workflow, from taking satellite imagery of the actual city of Fallujah, designing it by districts that included outskirts, industrial, urban residential, and urban center. They showed the evolution of the design of these areas, the skins, the textures, the complexity, and it was abundantly clear that the developers were committed to delivering the most incredible map ever put in a large-scale multiplayer shooter. Then for several years, we didn't hear anything. There was some rumors, there was some talk on Reddit, but we didn't know what had happened to the Fallujah map. That is until August 12th, 2020. That's when Squad's developer OWI published the second update on Fallujah, Road to Fallujah Part 2. They said, "It's been a while since we walked these streets. Let's get familiar again." The author writes that, while for many at Offworld it feels like just yesterday, the first article in this series, Road to Fallujah Part 1, was released almost 3 years ago. In that time, a lot has happened, and Squad as a game has changed tremendously. Our team has been hard at work the entire time, but Fallujah as a map has taken many different forms and priorities over the many months it has been in development. In this article, our level design and environment team will go into great detail on their process for developing Fallujah's many facets, giving a window into the development of this ambitious project. And ambitious it is. The rest of the article goes on to detail incredibly immersive environments, both day and night layers, new particle effects and burning streets, battle-damaged pockmarked walls, handcrafted city features right around where the cap points and fobs are expected to be, incredible art and design overlays that have gone into tremendous detail, mapping out perfect areas all around the city, where tremendous detail has been paid to every nook and cranny, including the placement of furniture and battle damage and buildings, with each building being accessible and enterable in the most complex and dynamic and three-dimensional urban combat ever seen in a platoon-wide first-person tactical shooter ever. I go into this much detail because I think it's important to understand how committed the OWI team is to this map before you ask the troubling question of whether or not the map itself is a blight on the history of the city of Fallujah and the conflicts that have taken place there. What I would say is it's quite the opposite. Instead, Fallujah in Squad is an example of a passion project from a committed group of developers who, among it, can claim combat veterans of their own. And while it's true that over the next many months and years, I will continue to enjoy Squad as perhaps the most important tactical shooter of all time. And every once in a while I'm enjoying this computer game, I'll encounter a moment that causes me to reflect on a time in history, where men like Gunnery Sergeant Shane and Sergeant Wells displayed virtue that history will admire forever. No, Fallujah, the map, and Squad, the video game, is not a blight on history. It's a tribute to it. I'm Controlled Pairs, and I play the most immersive PC games in the world. This is Squad, and I'll see you in the next one.